These were a group of brazen scoundrels, often coming to a tavern to cause trouble. On this day, the ruffians were harassing a serving girl in public, unaware that the tavern owner had, from far and wide, summoned a bodyguard. This man was named Jack. Once upon a time, he was a UFC champion who struck fear far and wide. Jack stepped forward, politely asking them to leave. But these fools, ignorant of death, refused to listen. Jack had no choice but to approach their motorcycles. Upon hearing this, the ruffians rushed out, prepared to end him right there. Jack, unfazed, asked if they had bought insurance. The ruffians sneered, but in the next moment, Jack struck without mercy. He moved swift as a released beast, in an instant doling out a brutal lesson to the lot. The ruffians were beaten senseless, unable to strike back, never daring to make trouble again. Not long before this, Jack was a UFC champion, basking in glory. Though he appeared gentle and courteous, once in the ring, he turned utterly fierce. In one match, though victory was already his, faced with his opponent's provocation, he disregarded the referee's orders and unleashed a flurry of punches. In the end, he beat his opponent to death. For this, he was banned from the ring for life. Since then, Jack drifted aimlessly, his spirit broken. He considered going underground to fight, at least to find some worth in himself. But when he took off his jacket, the underground champion, with 8 straight wins, saw Jack's face and fled in terror, leaving behind even his prize money. Feeling utterly bored, Jack was about to leave, when a woman suddenly approached him. From then on, Jack's fate took a new turn. The woman was called Blackie. She ran a tavern on an island. Recently, some unsavory sorts kept showing up to make trouble. The island's lawmen didn't care. So, on a friend's suggestion, she thought to hire an underground fighter as a guard. But upon seeing the champion flee, at the sight of Jack, she knew Jack was the true expert she sought. She offered him $20,000 a month, hoping he'd become her guard. But Jack rejected her outright. After leaving, Jack drove his car onto the railroad tracks, intending to end it all that night. His career destroyed, Jack's spirit was dead. But as the train drew near, Jack had a sudden change of heart. Better to try a new place than to die without courage. So he took Blackie's address and went to the beautiful island. Blackie's tavern lay by the most scenic shore. As soon as Jack sat down, he was drawn in by the view. By day, the tavern was peaceful, a picture of tranquility. But come nightfall, all manner of rogues appeared. They not only brawled in the tavern, but smashed things up, disturbing business. Jack calmly threw the lot outside, then let them taste a flurry of his blows. The ruffians had never faced such a fierce man, and even with broken limbs, they dared not make a sound. This fierce display left the onlookers wide-eyed in shock, aiming to make a big matter small. Afterward, Jack personally took them to the hospital. These villains suddenly became meek as lambs, quietly cooperating with the doctor. Afterward, as Jack was leaving the hospital, a female doctor called out to him. She assumed Jack was with the ruffians, and utterly despised troublemakers like them. She let loose a torrent of scolding at Jack, but he patiently explained himself. Seeing his ruggedly handsome face, she believed his words. She then noticed he was bleeding at the waist, and kindly brought him to a room for bandaging. With just the two of them in the room, the air felt ripe with possibility. Sure enough, a few days later, the two took a yacht out to sea. She kindly brought him to the infirmary for bandaging. Alone together in a room, man and woman, a little brush here, and there easily ignites sparks. Sure enough, in a few days, the two took a yacht out to sea together for fun. It seemed like at any moment, they'd start splashing about. Just like that, Jack began a very comfortable island life. By day, he courted, and by night, he guarded the tavern. Under Jack's iron hand, any drunkards causing trouble in the tavern were swiftly dealt with. But things were far from simple. These ruffians didn't come to the tavern just for trouble. They had another purpose. Behind them was a fiendish villain, their boss Brant. He was the overlord of this island, and even the police dared not provoke him. Brant recently set his sights on Blackie's tavern, wanting to buy it out and turn it into a dock for his opium trade. But Blackie refused to cooperate. So, he sent his lackeys to stir up trouble. Who would have thought that Blackie had found such a tough man? One night, a pickup truck caught Jack off guard, trying to ram him. Luckily, his quick reflexes saved him in the nick of time. But the truck quickly backed up for another go, and Jack, unable to dodge, was struck off the bridge. Fortune smiled on him. He survived without life-threatening injuries. Having narrowly escaped death, Jack hurried home, only to find the ruffians from the tavern, armed and waiting. Jack feigned distraction to draw their attention, then took the chance to strike. In a few moves, he threw them overboard. He hadn't intended to kill, but as he was about to pull one back onto the boat, a crocodile suddenly appeared, hungry for a meal, and so, the ruffian became its feast. The next day, feeling something was amiss, Brant sent men to confront Jack. One of them showed off the pistol at his waist, threatening Jack to come along with them. As a champion, Jack couldn't care less. He strolled over casually, and in the blink of an eye, broke the finger mint for pulling the trigger. Then, he warned another lackey. If you've got something to say, tell Brant to meet me at the tavern. With that, he nonchalantly walked away. Jack's disregard infuriated Brant. What enraged Brant even more was that his failure was reported to his father by an insider. In a fit of anger, his father sent a bloodthirsty brute, Connor, to settle it. He was the mob's top enforcer, and terribly strong. Yet, Brant asked Connor to give him one more chance, as he'd already enlisted the local police's help to find a way to capture Jack. But just as they closed in, the lady doctor showed up. giving the sheriff a good slap, rescuing Jack from their clutches. It turns out, the lady doctor was the sheriff's daughter, and she'd long known of her father's dealings with the mob. She urged Jack to leave immediately, because the island was crawling with Brant's men. He alone couldn't possibly take them on. But since Jack had promised Blackie, he would see it through to the end. Just as he returned to the tavern to stand guard, Connor barged in wielding a golf club. He smashed his way in, and the guards tried to stop him, only to be taken down in one move each. The tavern descended into chaos. Jack had no choice but to step in again. But this time, his foe was fierce. They exchanged punch for punch, kick, for 300 rounds. In the end, Connor fought dirty, having his men grab Jack's arms, then landing a flurry of combination punches. Jack was left dazed, and finally thrown out of the tavern with a brutal toss. Facing Connor's fierce assault, Jack didn't retaliate, but instead gave him a calm look, then turned and left without a word. Connor sensed something was amiss with Jack. It wasn't that Jack didn't want to fight back, but he feared losing control like before, going too far and killing his opponent. That dark past had become a nightmare haunting his heart. Returning home, Jack packed his things ready to leave for good, but Blackie blocked his way, first offering Jack her sincere apologies. She admitted she had concealed the truth when she first asked for his help. Blackie hoped Jack could stay and lend her a hand. Her family had lived on this island for generations, but lately, the Brant family wanted to drive everyone out, to turn it into a playground resort. Yet Jack had no desire to get involved, so he declined. But as he walked past the bookstore, he found it had been burned down. A young girl and her father were badly injured, sent to the hospital with severe burns. Jack's rage surged. They'd always treated him kindly, helping him out when he first arrived. At that moment, Jack realized he had to do something. His gaze turned deadly. He marched straight to Brant's lair, where one of Brant's men was packing up. Jack asked him if he was the one who burned the bookstore. The thug admitted it without hesitation. Jack stepped up and delivered a fierce punch, crushing his organs. The thug, struggling for breath, fell into the pool and quickly met his end. Jack planned to dispose of the body, but ran into another thug at the door. This one, recognizing the situation, quickly backed down and willingly revealed Brant's whereabouts. Seeing his cooperation, Jack spared him. The next morning, following the thug's directions, Jack went to the dock. There, he saw a police officer sneaking around with a suitcase, as if he was smuggling something. Jack quietly followed him, knocking him out with a single punch. Taking his gun, he fired several shots into the body, making it look like he'd been shot by the police. He then opened the suitcase, finding it full of cash. An idea dawned on Jack. First, he reported to the police that he'd found a body by the shore. The sheriff came rushing over, demanding Jack hand over the cash, claiming his daughter, the lady doctor, had been taken hostage by Brant. If the money wasn't returned, her life would be in danger. Surprisingly, Jack agreed without a fuss, but told him the money was hidden somewhere secure and would take a bit of time to retrieve. Once the sheriff left, Jack set off on a yacht to find Brant, but he didn't bring the money. He stashed a remote bomb in the bag instead. The sheriff and Brant tried to pull a fast one, planning to lure Jack onto the boat to kill him. Realizing he hadn't brought the cash, Brant flew into a rage, ordering his men to shoot. But Jack pulled out the detonator, instantly blowing a hole in the yacht. Water gushed into the boat. Jack seized the chance to enter the cabin and rescue the lady doctor. She climbed into a lifeboat to escape, but was caught by Brant, who'd barely survived. Jack moved to help, but Connor, the bloodthirsty maniac, arrived on a speedboat. With no time for a drawn-out fight, Jack quickly shook off Connor and pursued Brant by speedboat. He leaped and kicked Brant over, then escaped with the lady doctor by jumping from the boat. But unlucky Brant wasn't so fortunate. By the time he realized it, the lifeboat had surged toward shore. Brant nearly hit the ground face first. Jack then reached the shore to see if the guy had died. Who knew that Brant was hiding nearby, ready to shoot? Angered, Jack charged at him, and he charged at him with a wild tackle. Then, he grabbed his ankle forcefully, had 8 ribs broken, as Jack prepared to finish him off. As Jack was about to finish him off, Connor arrived in his pickup for backup. Without a word, Jack rushed him, and the two exchanged blows, each strike landing solidly. Connor, immensely strong, sent Jack flying with a spinning kick. But Jack, after all, was a UFC champion. Once he got his bearings, he threw Connor down with a fierce side throw. But Connor was tough, and stood up to charge Jack again. Yet Jack wasn't one to back down, and immediately tackled him, flipping him once more. They went blow for blow, round after round, for 300 bouts. Finally, Jack, exhausted, wrapped himself around Connor from behind, holding tight. Unexpectedly, this move worked wonders, and Connor began to choke as he fell. At the critical moment, Connor managed to reach a wooden stake on the ground, and stabbed Jack in the side. Just as Jack was on the brink of death, Brant suddenly shouted from the sidelines, ordering Connor to kill Jack immediately. Connor hated being yelled at more than anything, so, in a rage, he twisted Brant's neck, killing him. However, this gave Jack a precious moment. He pulled the stake from his side, and drove it into Connor's leg. Then, he snatched Connor's spike, and stabbed him over and over, turning him into a pincushion. When it was over, the sheriff and the lady doctor arrived. The sheriff urged Jack to leave quickly, promising to cover for him. Jack and the lady doctor said their goodbyes, and he set off on his journey home. From then on, he began a new life, and the island returned to its former peace, free from the Brant family's threats. Alright, that's the end of today's movie recap. This film is Fury in the Desert Sands. Though the plot is quite formulaic, the action scenes are rather realistic and very exciting. The director used many close-up shots, creating an immersive experience for the audience. If you're a fan of tough guy movies, give it a watch.